Hello, Rachel.
Hi, Ryan.
How are you doing?
Not great.
How could you say that? We are back. Back to what made us.
Yeah, and of course I'm not happy about it.
Why would you say that? Oh, I know why. Rachel, you can tell everyone why, but I think I know. It's because you're sad it's coming to an end. That's why.
That's so not the reason.
Rachel's tearing up right now thinking about how this is the final season, the final days of Discovery for everyone, including us.
The days are limited.
The days we're counting down, Rachel. That's why you're not happy? Is that it?
No. I'm happy that it's over.
How could you say that?
I'm happy that this is the first time that we will be starting this.
No, it's not our first time.
No, but it's the last time that we're doing a season premiere of Star Trek Discovery.
Yeah, that's right. They were often the best episodes of Discovery too, so it's really going to be a downhill slide from here, unfortunately. No, in all seriousness though, jokes aside, in all seriousness, Rachel, we are here today to start the journey, to conclude the series that made us start podcasting in the first place. We are Yum Yum Podcast because of Star Trek Discovery. A line of dialogue said that was so out of place, so abnormal, so strange and peculiar that it made our jaws hit the floor, and we knew in our hearts, both of us, that it was something that would make us want to rewatch Discovery to see all of the strange choices, the weird things that they do, and if it all fits together or not. I mean, the Yum Yum moment, yes, it's dumb and silly, and we make fun of it, but it was the perfect encapsulation at that time of just the state of Star Trek Discovery, and it made us say, we are going to podcast about this one day, because you and I, we would have hours-long conversations after episodes. And I think it's fair to say, Rachel, and I would love to get your thoughts on this, Discovery still, to this day, is one of the shows that was like ongoing week to week that we would spend lengthy amount of time talking about an episode after it was done. It was not just a case of, oh, the episode hit credits and then you move on to cleaning up the dishes.
Yeah, It's stank-lingered, much like our guest.
Oh, wow. Rachel, how could you say that? We have someone here who's not only a returning, but they're a Star Trek writer themselves.
Yeah.
They're responsible for a piece of media of Star Trek. I'm sure they'll remind us all of what that is, but Rachel, what's going on? Who's with us?
We have a very non-stinky guest. With us today, we have Steve.
Hello. It's okay. I kind of smell like garlic right now. So,
you worried about vampires, Steve?
He watched Nosferatu and it's gotten into his brain.
It's that time. I'm always scared of vampires. How are you guys doing? Thank you for having me on. It's an honor to ring in the last hurrah of the Discovery with you both.
Well, it's made all the better for having a guest like yourself on, Steve. Now, could you tell us all a bit about yourself, what you do, your relationship to Star Trek and Star Trek Discovery?
My name is Steve. For a while there, and some of you might remember me doing a Babylon 5 podcast with my friends Ben and Sean, and ultimately what I consider that was a Crusade prequel podcast. It's all good. We wrapped up a little while ago. I'm a cartoonist. I'm a writer, an actor, man about town in Chicago, Illinois. And yeah, like you said, I actually did write for Star Trek a little while ago. How to describe this? So there are these interactive play places scattered around the United States called camp. And the idea is that you bring your kid into this like play place. Do you guys have stuff like that down in Australia? Kind of like Chuck E. Cheese or like Discovery Zone or something?
Equivalents. It's hard to say because we don't
like
have children to care.
Not a one-to-one, but yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of similar to that, and they were doing a tie-in with Star Trek Prodigy, which had just come out or had just finished its first season, and I was able to write the kind of story of the Star Trek Prodigy experience. So when the campers, they call it, when the kids would come into the store and start their experience, it was I came up with this idea that yes, they are all these misfits that the holograms, who are the staff, are trying to wrangle into being great Starfleet officers, and there are all these games that I kind of changed the rules around to be more Trek, and like they gave me the menu. They're like, "What could you do with this?" And I was like, "I don't know, Jordy's pizza instead of like pepperoni pizza. It's like Jordy's favorite pizza, pepperoni pizza." So stuff like that. It was fun. It was a weird assignment. But
how do you stumble across? How do you stumble into something like that? And will they call you up again, Steve? We need you to write another Star Trek Play Zone thing.
I can't speak for the business side of things, but I will say the Star Trek Play Zone did not last as long as, say, the Moana Play Zone or stuff like that. Star Trek was kind of in and out, so I doubt they'll give me another ring. But I have friends of my friends. Someone just kind of reached out and was like, "Hey, this guy said you're a big Star Trek fan." And I was like, "Yeah, I've been watching Star Trek half my life." And it was just as sometimes these things fall into your lap. I was very lucky, very fortunate.
And I hope that when you wrote your adventure for the children, you included the bit in which suddenly the adventure was cancelled and erased off platforms for tax purposes. Yeah,
it doesn't exist anymore. I think.
Sorry,
yes.
You have to hope that another streaming service will save it and give you the second adventure. But
I think
maybe
Prodigy's
one
writing
day
was on the wall when my incredible scripts could not save the experience.
You know, Steve was really high up there because Will Wheaton gave him a call and said, "Could I be involved in this, please?
Yeah.
Please let me have a go. I want to be a cool Gary Seven character now."
Do you want to go on the what's his show? The
Ready Room?
Yeah. Do you want to go in the Ready Room and talk? No, we didn't get that, unfortunately. But
unfortunately,
it was wild. Like, to honestly be like, I got a paycheck. It was not huge, but it's like from Paramount for Star Trek. It's like, yeah, cool. I'm in. That's great.
You're in the canon, so Steve has the Star Trek in his DNA, you could say. It's a foundation point. Maybe it was something that was given to him by some older form of life that we just can't help ourselves. Steve, Rachel and I are both just salivating to hear what the episode we watched was called and what it was about. Could you inform us all?
Yes, and I do want to. I'm so sorry, Rachel, that this is the beginning of the end. I know you're
devastated. That's why I've been so quiet.
Well, let's do. This is episode 1, Red Directive. Captain Burnham and the USS Discovery are sent to retrieve a mysterious artifact hidden inside an 800-year-old Romulan vessel, but find that they're not the only ones on the hunt. Meanwhile, Saru is offered the position of a lifetime.
Wow. I'm getting a bit misty-eyed hearing it, Rachel. A lot of emotions had. And I think it's very key to remember that we are the Yum Yum podcast because of a line of dialogue that was so just silly and out of place and kooky and strange. And we like to commemorate that with each watch-through of a show we do. We either talk about, like, this was a Yum Yum moment, or this had Yum Yum energy, or this was sexy and fun. But with Discovery, we like to hone in on a Yum Yum moment. And Rachel, was there anything for you? Was there a line, a choice, an action?
There were a number of contenders for the Yum Yum moment, the Yum Yum line of this episode. There were also a number of others that weren't even good enough to be Yum Yum lines, but did make me annoyed the way that a Yum Yum line would.
And people can see you being annoyed because for our final season coverage, we've started recording our reactions to watching the episodes, which you can find on our Patreon, Yum Yum Podcast on Patreon. And Rachel, we get you to now get recorded watching these because people want to see these reactions. But also, it's a great way to keep you focused while watching an episode.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. But a line that I wanted to mention just because I was just like, oh, for fuck's sake, was when
David Cronenberg, the director.
Doesn't even deserve to be called by his character name. When he's like, the greatest treasure in the known galaxy is out there. What are you waiting for?
Wow. That's the call to adventure.
That's the end of this episode, and I was just like, oh my god, it's so trash.
Wow.
But the line, the Yum Yum moment for me has got to be Tilly. Tilly being like, prepared to kiss my caffeinated ass.
Oh yeah, that is a God,
Steve was a little caught off guard by that one.
I remember that line. Yes, it's funny because Ryan was like, "Oh, make sure you have a Yum Yum line." I was like, I watched the episode 20 minutes ago. I couldn't tell you a single line. But now that you mentioned that, yes, I do remember that line. Oh boy.
So, Steve, what do you remember? What was your Yum Yum moment of Red Directive?
It's. I think one that really bugged me was when they were pulling out virtually, obviously, because they don't touch anything in Discovery. It's all holograms that they wave their hands around. But they waved their hands in the air and they got Fred's brain. They're like, oh, yes, AS. Like Alton Soong. I was like, who the fuck is that? And it's the guy from Picard?
Yes.
Like, they didn't even go to the like Soong from the one that everyone actually cares about from TNG. They went
the one from Enterprise. Okay.
They went for the one from was it Enterprise? I don't even. It was just like, okay, man, that's great.
They went with that one. They went with the one from Picard because they make a reference to Grey's body, which is which is a thing descended from that song in Picard. Because remember that Picard's a golem now.
Yeah,
remember that he's not alive anymore. He's a corpse, like he's a robotic corpse.
But he'll age like a real person.
And no one ever talks about it again.
Yeah, don't worry about it. It's all good. It's all good.
Great pick from Steve because that's like a referencey one. Like, hey, we did a little reference, and you're right. It's in reference to a song that no one actually cares about. Like, no one cared about that one. No one also cares about the one from season 2 of Picard. No one cares. No offense, Steve. No one cares about the one from Enterprise either. Like the one you care about is the one from TNG, the one that actually fucking matters to any of this. My choice is from Michael Burnham. And it's her on top of the ship, riding it out. A lot of one-liners from her, but one that really bugged me is she has this exchange with Raina, and she's having this exchange with Saru, and she says, like, let me go, we've got to do this because I have a saxophone lesson to get back to later today.
Oh
I've got a saxophone lesson to get to, yeah.
And that annoys me because it's just a quirky thing. It's just a lol random, so funny, because Michael Burnham obviously does not have a saxophone lesson to go to. And I just find it annoying because in a great version of this show, it would actually be a fun thing that later this episode or season, you see she actually does play saxophone. Like, remember when characters in Star Trek had hobbies? Like Data with his art, or, Reg with acting. Like, that's fun. It was a fun thing that made Star Trek feel alive. Like the Doctor in Voyager being an opera singer. Like, these are fun things. But this line is just like, it's a funny, quippy thing for Michael to say because we have to have dialogue here.
The ship can't take much more, and I would rather not die out here. I've got a saxophone lesson to get to.
We are here to talk about the last season of Discovery, and I want to get into the history that we have with it and our thoughts on the episode, of course, but give us the rundown of your relationship to this premiere, but also the news of this being the last season of this show, because it did come out of the blue.
You expect me to remember about that?
Ugh.
What do I remember about this? I remember being not surprised that it got canned. And that they found out very late in the production process of this season, and they were having to hodgepodge it to tie up loose ends. And we were wondering how badly they were going to fuck that up.
Because there was reshoots to help wrap things up. We knew that going in.
I think we also knew that it was based on an existing idea, but I can't remember if I knew that it was going to be based off the chase.
No, I think they made a big song and dance that they were the season was built off of a previous episode in Star Trek history, and it's like, okay, what does that mean? And people would piece it together from the trailers, but I didn't really watch trailers for Discovery.
We didn't need to be sold on the show because you were going to subject us both to it no matter what.
Because it was the final season. We had to see it.
Yeah.
And do you remember watching this premiere when it first aired, your reactions to?
I remember being really bored, especially by the action, which I still was. I also remember being annoyed that they so quickly got Book back because they made such a big deal about them parting ways and that they were splitting up and because they weren't in a relationship properly anymore.
He became a terrorist last season.
Yeah, that kind of puts a dampener on most relationships unless you're also a terrorist. I remember feeling that way when we watched it for the first time, and being concerned that they were going to dump Saru.
Yeah, because there's just a feel you have when watching a show where you go, oh, this cast member's not going to be in the show that much. We had that with Tilly last season, and we didn't even know that for a fact, and then it happens. And spoiler alert, it does happen with Saru. He's barely in the season. And that's like a massive, massive weakness because he's the best character of the show. So not having him in the season makes the season significantly harder to swallow. I was shocked that they actually cancelled Discovery and did it in the way that they did because it had just kept going. It just kept going and defied all of these reactions that people had to it. And I think for the most part, the people who were fans of Discovery were happy with it. Like, it had reached an equilibrium. We've actually discussed this a few times over the podcast of we kind of longed for the days of the first half of the show where it was messier and took bigger swings and was bigger at its failures, but also it was reaching higher, while in the back half, it's very white noisy.
I was unfazed when I heard it was being canceled. It's like, yeah, sure. I don't see buzz for Discovery. I don't see the kind of love for it. It just kind of seemed like a show that was on autopilot, on fumes. It was just kind of there. It has not seemed to make a huge impact on the Trek canon as a whole. For example, my girlfriend works at a comic book store and they got Star Trek comics all the time. And none of them are Discovery. None of them. There's Strange New Worlds. There's Lower Decks. There's, classic. So I just feel like Discovery never really rang the bell for people. And when it was canceled, it's yeah, of course it is. This looks expensive, and these streamers are losing money hand over fist. Of course it's got to go. Bye. Myself, I'm a big Star Trek fan. I've watched almost everything. We'll get to it. And I remember when Discovery premiered season 1, I didn't like it really at all. And I really had to fight with myself on that because I remember when hearing stories about when Next Gen started and all these original series guys were just sticks in the mud. And they were like, that's not what Star Trek is. That's not what a Klingon looks like. That's not what a captain should be. And I was like, is that me? Am I doing that again? Am I that guy, but for 2014 or whatever? Like, is that? So I wanted to be open-minded every season and I wanted to watch it all. And I was always disappointed. And I never really had a good time. I don't think I could tell you a Discovery episode just off the top of my head. I'm like, oh, classic Trek. This one episode of Discovery. Can't do it. And when this season started, I kind of went in with that same attitude. I'm like, okay, it's last season. Let's give it a try. And this episode does so much heavy lifting to be your first, not you guys obviously, but like your first episode of Discovery. Like it covers all the bases. It's very actiony. It's very fast, and there's like a speeder bike chase through the desert. There's the episode opens with her surfing on a spaceship. Like they go out of their way to be like, this is what Trek is now. Strap in. They're starting a new plot. All that stuff was happening, and I was just watching it. I remember I watched this for the first time, and after 4 seasons of just not caring at all, the needle barely moving, when I saw this, I was like, this is a brand new start to a brand new story. I was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm sorry. I have not had a good time with the show pretty much ever. God bless you for trying something, but I got more things to do in my life than suffer through these episodes that I don't want to watch. So God bless. See you around. I did not enjoy this one, but for my own mental health, I'm not going to suffer through episodes 2 through 10 or whatever, like you two maniacs. But watching it again was not fun, and I hate you both for making me do it.
What? Why would you say that?
Ryan for it too. So.
What you said is true, though. Like, there's this level of like, well, every Star Trek show starts out rough.
And I want to start with how fucking boring the action is in this episode.
Go
ahead. The scale of it is meant to be like huge. And it does not interest me at fucking all.
How come? Is it poorly executed?
At some points, yes. It just feels contrived. The CG, because it's all CG, nothing is practical. It doesn't have any weight to it.
No texture to it.
That's not because CG can't do that. It's because it's way more expensive than what they have the budget to do. So there's just moments so frequently in this episode, particularly with the action, where it just feels so fake. Like, it's strange that you still have that sensation of being like, oh, this feels familiar, or that feels flat. The same way you do when you're watching a TNG episode and you see that same village set.
The relationship Star Trek has to action, I always find very, peculiar, because I don't come to Star Trek for the action, but it's always been there. You go back to the 60s show and there's the fist fights that you get every episode or two. And the spaceship battles. I like spaceship battles, don't get me wrong, but when I think of Star Trek, I'm not thinking about the action appeal of it. But it's definitely been something that's been there since the start, but it's grown more and more and more over time, the focus on it. I think of the TNG movies very much so bleeding into this and making things louder and kind of stupider. I can't help but think of Worf shooting a Borg in space and saying, assimilate this. And it's that's action movie schlock. And it's is that what I come to Star Trek for? Remember the grand old days of the motion picture in which the only time the Enterprise fires its phasers is to destroy an asteroid in its way, and that's the only action you get in the movie. Kirk doesn't even throw a punch.
It's funny. It's kind of like Rachel says. The CG is not very good. I would definitely say that the level of your computer effects. It doesn't matter if it's really bad or not. If the characters and story are compelling, you could turn on any old movie, and if you are compelled by the story, it almost doesn't matter whether or not it looks good. Like if it looks good enough and you're compelled, it's good. It's like that line in Dark Place where it's like, if you go to a Punch and Judy show looking for the strings, there's something wrong with it. Dean Lerner's great line.
We both covered 100+ episodes of Babylon 5, in which every time it cut to the exterior, it looked like a video game.
Yeah, it looks like bullcrap, but it's like, oh, that you come to love it. You come to love it because it's like, that's where my friends live. It's just nothing. It's just a lot of rubbery CG, and it expects you to give a shit about it. And I really just don't. In the episode, it is so aggressive with its action. It opens in media res, which is fine. It's fine. It's not my favorite.
It's not
but
though,
it's fine.
Steve, is it? You can admit that it's not fine.
It's pretty annoying. But it's like, oh, I'm surfing on a spaceship, and then there's like a fight in a Middle Eastern flavored marketplace, and then that turns into a speeder bike chase, and everyone's chasing each other through outer space. There's tractor beams and explosions, and it's like
and
yeah,
and
exactly.
this and that and this.
It's
and
so
that,
much.
and
It's yes ending, Steve, which you approve of.
It's Chicago improv. I think the only thing I liked about the action was when the criminals, when their ship kind of runs away and they kind of shoot off these fireworks to kind of confuse your sensors. It was the only time in that whole episode where I was like, there's action that I understand. It has character motivation behind it. And now I know more about the characters. Like, they are really cunning criminals who know all these tricks to get Starfleet off their ass.
That cherry that they just dropped on our shit Sunday left us with 20 warp signatures all charting different courses.
Mr. Saru.
Unfortunately, it will likely take several days to determine which signature belonged to their vessel.
By which time they'll be long gone.
Is it too cynical, Rachel, to say that the implementation of action, especially in something like Discovery and even Strange New Worlds, is to just pad out a script? Because there's so much time spent on just running and gunning and not a lot of... Because action can have character work and themes woven through it, but just it doesn't feel like modern Trek does that. It just is, here's an action scene now.
No, it's... This episode, like, rewatching it, I really felt the storyboard of it, of being like, okay, so we've got this part, we've got these scenes that we need to fill in. So we've got this conversation scene, and now we need some action here, and this is what it's going to look like. And then they fill in the script. Like, that's the way that it was coming together in my head. So it's just like they just care about the spectacle of it. They don't care about the depth of it. And that's the same with the broader script as well. So the fact that the action doesn't have much depth is not surprising when the relationships have limited depth.
But I can't help but watch something like this episode and think about how we know for a fact, especially with a lot of streaming services, but obviously networks as well, that shows are now being engineered to be written and constructed in ways for people at home who are distracted. Have lines that always repeat so that the person who's watching this on one screen... Second screen, or if they're washing the dishes, or if they're doing this and this. And I can't help but be cynical enough to believe, like, a part of the reason the action is here is so that you can watch this episode mindlessly. That's what I go to. And I think it's such a shame, because even moments within the 5 seasons of Discovery show that they can be above that. But I think this episode, all I was absorbing was how much this stuff was wasting my time. And Steve, since you stopped here, this was your stopping point for
Yes,
Discovery.
it was,
having to revisit it and having to look through it again, what did you feel about like those opening scenes where they were doing the catch up of the crew? Like, here's what Paul is feeling. Adira is here as well. Hugh is here.
Cool.
Could you catch us up on the crew?
Tilly wants to teach. Saru is in love. Michael is
keep
captain.
Michael is captain. That's what she's doing.
Book is gone. He was punished for falling in with the wrong crowd, aka the only character last season that had any charisma.
Oh god. Paul?
I don't even remember. It's like, these people, okay. These great Broadway actors are just standing around. I really don't remember what Paul was up to. He seemed upset this episode, though, because there's no more Spore Drive. Rest in peace. And then his beautiful husband, who has nothing to do ever. Also, I remember he was trying to be a therapist at some point. Where you think that being a doctor is going to be way enough. Like, that's going to be enough. But I guess he wants to be a therapist too. I don't know. I was like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, that's what these characters. It's kind of like catching up on like your cousin's friends where when you go to Thanksgiving dinner and it's like, oh yeah, and Jim's doing good. He's down there working at the car. He's selling cars now. It's a Volkswagen. And it's like, yeah, okay, all right. Oh, the barber moved down the street. He moved to the new place down in Bridgeport. It's like, okay. I kind of remember these people, but it doesn't move the needle at all for me.
I found it just humorous when they're at that event and they're drinking the fancy drinks, and it's like, here's where we're at. We're catching up from the events that ended season 4, and nothing has changed for them, even though they went through all of these grand things that would change their lives. The most is Saru has a job offer, and Paul's career is ruined because of the events of season 4, which is hilarious to me because no one else seems to care. Like, he's valid in being upset that his entire career is flushed down the toilet. And Hugh and Adira, these people who he, is his family and he loves, are just like, oh, Paul, it's fine.
Michael had a line where it's like, it's a new world. You'll find a new calling. It's like, what a thing to say to someone who revolutionized life. Like, this
and
guy
their technology is still revolutionary. It's not out of date.
Exactly. No, it's evergreen technology. That's like that's like going back to the guy who tamed a horse and being like, hey, I'm sorry, we don't do horses anymore. Why don't you go, I don't know,
die.
Figure out why don't you just go die? Like, yeah, come on, jeez.
Rachel, you and I, for another podcast, we went over the antagonists of Discovery, and we talked about Tarka and how fun he was, and he was probably the best character. But it makes him even better because he managed, without it being his goal, to completely destroy the Spore Drive technology for future generations. And destroy Stamets. Yeah, like, isn't that 10 times better for Tarka? Like, Tarka did his plan, and he did it in such a way in which he has held back the progression of every society for an indefinite amount of time because he spooked them with how he used the Spore Drive as a weapon. It's like hilarious to me that Paul is crying about, like, my career's in the toilet, oh boo-hoo, and I'm just laughing at the fact that Tarka did that without even trying. Like, it makes him even better as an antagonist in retrospect.
Incidental.
It's just an incidental detail. And, we got Tilly, as Steve said, and Rachel, you're a teacher. So I'm sure you have opinions on Tilly the teacher. And
what she's doing is not even really talking about teaching, though. Like, she's managing and being like, well, they can't all be shy. Well, yeah, they can be. It's inconvenient for you, and you're trying to manage them and put dynamics in, and get them to learn skills. It's not really about teaching them how to do things. She's arranging work experience.
This character is supposed to, I don't know how old she's supposed to be, but I'm always conflicted about it because I'm like, this person is older than me and they're acting like they're still in high school and yet they're also like going to be a teacher of cadets, and I just find it very hard to swallow. Her
crush is so bad for that though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like being awkward around somebody that you find attractive is a thing. Tilly is awkward all of the time. So her being awkward around somebody that she has a crush on, yeah, she's going to take it to extremes.
I think there's just a difference in performance of like being socially inept and being like a child and or young of heart and all of that. Like I can't help but compare her to Reg Barclay, and it's just like night and day of like how these people feel like they're dysfunctional adults who are having to function in a high pressure environment.
Steve, did you even give this a second thought though?
I think my biggest thing with Tilly was that in that opening scene when everyone was drinking those cocktails that the bartender actually touched all of the liquid.
I also made fun of that. I was like, why is she sticking a finger in everybody's drink?
Couldn't use a straw. Nope. Literal finger to touch your bubbles.
A toothpick fingers. Even?
Yep.
Just
nothing. But there was a moment where Stamets feels bad that he brought a book and everyone turns to Tilly because it's like, oh, you're her friend. And I was just like, I'm not getting any of that. I remember when this started, they were like roommates or something and they kind of made a promise to each other that they were going to advance through the ranks on the Discovery. And at this point, that's just nothing. I don't buy their friendship because there's nothing there. And I got sad. I was just like, I remember when they were friends, but these characters, this writing, it doesn't encourage those kind of long-term friendships. I just didn't buy it, and that made me pretty sad. And everything else about it was just, yeah, sure, whatever. She's a teacher. Who cares? I guess she'll be in the new show. Maybe I haven't.
They were building it for her to be the Academy show, but I do not think, I may be incorrect. I haven't looked up all the behind the scenes, but I don't think she's going to be a regular on that show.
Oh, well.
I may be incorrect on that. I only
got to
pay Paul Giamatti says.
Yeah, when you got to pay for Giamatti, you got to at least.
Tilly can't just do one job.
Now, I want to bring this up. It's so important to me that everyone knows this because, Steve, you haven't watched any more episodes. Rachel and I have watched it, and people, you have watched Discovery out there or not, you may need to be reminded of this. This romance that Tilly has, never brought up again.
Never.
Beyond this episode, never brought up again.
Oh, that's a shame. Because at least
spent
it's something.
So long on it, Steve, though. Like, that's the thing. We may joke and say, I didn't want it in the first place. You could go out, oh, boo-hoo. But we spent time on it. Why? If it's not going to come back up.
Yeah. Come on. You guys give her something to do. That's fun.
Oh, okay. Well, actually, maybe I have a fever. You should go before you catch it.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Plus, I have tests to grade, so,
sure.
yeah. But thank you for walking me back. And, yeah, if you ever wanted to do it again, like, walk or talk or...
Yeah?
Walk.
Oh, well,
yeah.
I love walking and talking, so...
Do you?
Yes.
Good. Great.
Very much. Okay.
Well, cool.
Bye.
In a first episode, in a premiere, you feel like, oh, they're setting up the seeds for these things that will come back later. They'll come back whether in a direct form or in a loose form. Like, I can't help but be angered at... In my mind, you have Hugh looking over Fred's body, and I thought, wow, they're spending a lot of time letting us know all of this stuff about Fred and how technical he is. Maybe he'll come back later in the season. Like, maybe they have to hook him up into something later in the season, and we get something... No, that's it. No more Fred. We did the thing with him, and that was it.
It must really matter in this season that Saru has accepted this post, this job offer of a lifetime, and he's saying yes to that, and he's also getting married. Like, he gets engaged to Trina. We've seen their relationship blossom since we've met her.
He's moving from being a member of the Discovery family to now being someone who's going to shape the world around them, because he's going to move into a political role, a diplomatic role. And, inherently, it would make sense to have him be an avatar for that in a storyline about a piece of law that could really shake the foundation of this very fragile federation.
And also of his own race, with their history of, being fooled into thinking that they have like a literal god that's intervening and that is a progenitor type force.
You think that all will come into play? Nope. Steve, I'm sorry to tell you, but Doug Jones was unavailable for most of this season because he had to do Hocus Pocus 2 press junkets.
Oh, is that it? Oh, okay.
Not Hocus Pocus 2, the press junkets.
Just the press. Oh, yeah. Was it What We Do in the Shadows? No, press junket for the Witch movie.
Yeah.
Right.
So they have this soul here to be like, hey, Saru, isn't it sweet? But looking back, and especially when you know how it all goes, this is just their way of spending time to set up why he's not going to be in the season at all. Well, surely President Rillick will take that place in the season, Rachel. Like, she's a big character. Maybe she'll be someone that deals with, like, all of the fallout of the thing that's revealed at the end of this episode about the chase. What's that? You give me a thumbs down. She's not in the show either, really. Well, that's a bummer. She was an interesting character, too. Let's talk about this Red Directive stuff. Steve, I feel like modern Star Trek does this a lot, where they have like these weird jargon phrases to explain very simple concepts, like, like Black Alert and like all of these things where it's like, hey, this is some new secretive term you've never heard of, and it's actually just like a mundane task of the Federation or Starfleet. Like, here's a Red Directive, and it's just, we're just doing Black Ops stuff. That's what it is.
Yeah. Well, I feel, it's... all of those things it's fun to say. It's fun to say Prime Directive. And I think they've been chasing that ever since. I think that's what it comes down to. It's like, yeah, Red Alert, that's fun. It's cooler than Red. Black. It's a Black Alert. So, yeah, I think that it's just like they've been chasing these fun things. And I think, honestly, the reason that I stopped watching Disco is like, they're really trying so hard to do this and make Red Alert happen, or not Red Alert, whatever the hell is
Red Directive and Black Alert and all of that.
Yeah.
Catchphrases.
And I'm just like, yeah, I know.
Let's fly.
Let's fly. It's silliness. It doesn't work. It doesn't seem organic. It really does seem like they are just trying to hit something that has worked in the past, and it's coming up short, obviously.
And what is a Red Directive in the context of the episode, Rachel? And how do you feel about it?
What was it exactly? Because they just kept on saying it, and it's just like, okay, it's just a mission, right? It is like this particular kind of secret mission that I can't talk about all of this other stuff.
It's a need to know mission, and you don't need to just general Black Ops shit.
Yeah, and it's just like, okay, is this... I was trying to remember if it was specifically like a Red Directive because it's tied to the Time Police.
Because that's a big thing too, is obviously at the end of this season, it's revealed that our boy, David Cronenberg, is the best character from Enterprise, Steve.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Daniels, he grew a lot of hair.
Of course.
He grew a lot of hair in his old age.
He looked totally different. He had a cooler costume in Disco, I'll give him that much.
Oh, you don't like his ribbed for her pleasure costume in Enterprise?
He looks like a garden hose that's been shredded up.
But Rachel, what is the Red Directive in the episode? What do they have to do?
Found a Romulan ship, which is... Oh, for fuck's sake.
It's from 800 years ago. It's been lost.
Yeah.
You had valuable data. We need you to get it.
Yeah, there you go. You did it for me.
You struggle. Why is it such a... Because they lay it out so, strongly. Here's the mission. You're on, your cops, and here's the
Because usually
case.
when you ask me stuff like that. You don't want me to just say that's what happened. You want me to have some insight. And I was trying to think of something to say about those events that wasn't just recounting them, and I couldn't.
Why doesn't it stick? Because
I think I remember what happened.
No, but why doesn't it stick to give you further insights? Because, like, when you talk about a plot of an episode of something, it should be more than just A plus B equals C. Like, this thing happened. It should be like, they're given this directive, but there's ethical implications to it, and our characters are uncomfortable.
Doesn't like that she's in the dark. Vance doesn't like that he's in the dark.
Why? Why don't they, like, why do they not just follow the chain of command? Like, there's many times in which we've seen throughout Star Trek and Discovery that it does not faze officers to have to follow orders that they do not directly understand.
Yeah, but in this, they are so entitled that they believe that they deserve the information, and it doesn't matter the reasons behind why they're not being told. They're going to do whatever they want, whatever they need, including getting Tilly to hack their own database to get what they believe that they have earned. They deserve the right to know everything, regardless of the context.
It definitely did surprise me how whiny they were about this. It just seemed like a mission. I just watched Chain of Command Part 1 with our boy Jellicoe, who essentially comes storming into the ship and is like, I don't like this. This got to change. Put on a uniform. Get the fish out of my office. I'm sorry I can't be your friend. There could be a war, so I don't have time to buddy up with. And I was like, yeah. And everyone kind of rolls with it. Like, even Riker and Geordi and everyone was like, oh, this sucks. They're like, I get it, though. Like, that's how it's got to be. And then in this episode, they get this high-level command, and they're like, okay, we gotta sneak around and find out what it is. The one thing that I like about it is that it moved the plot forward in a way where I was worried that would be the whole season. Let's open this puzzle box. At the very least, at the end of the episode, we got to the puzzle box. So kudos to getting to the fun part, but it did seem very silly that they were whining about having to do that. But they didn't get into trouble. No one got into trouble. There was no consequences for them doing what they did. So it all felt very weightless. Like, oh no, they had to break the rules, but oh, good for them. Everyone loves you anyway.
But Steve, did you love Fred? Were you going, oh, Fred?
Oh, Fred. No. I was shocked that it was just like, it's another Data. It's not because I'm precious about what a Soong android is. Like, I don't care. But it seems like they were just trying to shoehorn in all these references for no reason. Like, why does it have to be a Soong android? What's the point of that? It just opens up these questions that I think they think we're delighted by it, but I was just annoyed by it. Like, why does this have to be here? Can't you come up with your own ideas? It just seems like they want fans to be happy and point at the screen and go, I remember that. It's Data, but it's a new guy. To be clear, though, I thought the guy doing Fred was pretty good. I thought he looked pretty good as a Data. I'm not going to lie to you.
I was mixed on his performance because it's written in a way where it's clearly supposed to be played like Data, but he doesn't play it like Data or an android at all. Like, he's very eccentric and over the top. And not to say, like, they can't be, like, Law was eccentric and over the top, but, like, he was broken, you know? Same with B4. Like, there was a bit of I don't know, like, my brain was trying to reconcile, like, all of these things going on. Like, it's not to say, like, this guy's giving a bad performance. I think he's doing a fun performance, but, like, for being a Soong android who's made up to look like Data, and the writing is very clearly supposed to having be like this, you know, dry analytical, you know, here's the statistics of this thing type character like your Data. Him playing it like he is a slimy, almost Ferengi-like character, didn't jive well with me. Rachel, what did you think of Fred? Were you stroking his hair and saying, "Oh, Fred," like all of the characters were?
No, I was just like, what the fuck are you doing? As an actor, what the fuck are you doing? Because it's just like, you are in this look, you are being given these lines, and yet you are doing it this way?
It's like
Why?
It's like when you see a Vulcan who's very emotional, like Tarina in this episode.
wrong.
It's very emotional. It's like, tone it down.
Yeah, it's just like, okay, you're making choices and I don't like them.
No evidence of dry rot, book lice, order Psychoptera, or beetles, countless variations of family, genus, and species. Of course, I could count them, but we do not have the entirety of this day now, do we? Therefore, I will take these. The lot of it if you like. 3 bars of latinum. Pleasure doing business with you both.
Do you have any opinions on the new villains of Discovery?
I like a thief. I think a pair of thieves that had some personality, I think that's a good thing. I didn't get a great read on them because so much of their scenes and so much of their material was the bland action. But I think because I liked the whole gimmick and the few lines that we got had a lot of personality, I come out pretty neutral on them. If I were watching the rest of the season, I would say, oh, I can't wait to see what happens next with these two. But I didn't, so that's that.
Rachel, these are the last antagonists of Discovery. We did a whole breakdown of all of the ones before them that came along, and I think it is worthy of note that they are different to the other types of villains we've had, even in just this episode. Like, yes, they do shooting and running, but like they're thieves. They have a different mode of operating.
They're a duo, which we haven't had before, right?
Not really.
Not in the way that like they're genuine partners. We've had, pair ups and a leader and a lieutenant situation a bunch.
Where they're both the villains, not like Book and Tarka, where Book's doing it because he's misguided, but Tarka's actually evil. It's not that type of relationship as a duo. Or Vok and L'Oreal, where it's like Vok's gone for most of the season as Ash Tyler.
They're a flip side of what Burnham and Book were when we didn't see them during that year of adventure that still gets callbacks. Still don't give a shit. But they are interesting, and I think the performers do a really good job, as well as the script, of establishing their relationship and how much they care for each other in a way that does almost manage to make it feel meaningful.
They are a Bonnie and Clyde. That's what they are. They're these lovers or these two duos that are running and gunning after the next thing, and they're coming up with these haphazard ways to escape the authorities. And I think that they had the most nuanced writing of the episode. As Steve pointed out, the way their ship operates was neat and clever, and it was shown to you, not told to you wholeheartedly. And that happened with a lot of their things, like him being this weird alien type that we haven't seen before, or things of that variety are woven throughout. I really liked her motivating him to keep going and going and going with the caper. Do you just want the pebbles or the whole mountain? Like, I like that type of exchange. I think it works well. Now, Rachel, Captain Rayner, he's going to be a mainstay of the season, and they even leave it off at the end like he could be a mainstay in future installments of Star Trek. He could be in the Academy show for all we know. So what do you feel about this character and the introduction of him as this rival and dark mirror to Michael?
Plug and play. Like, it's just rinse and repeat of somebody that will challenge Burnham and won't agree and will be right some of the time and wrong most of the time, but they'll learn to get along in the end because he'll realize just how right Michael is because gosh darn it, she always is.
Just like Saru did, just like Paul did, just like the Admiral did.
Everybody's got to learn that Burnham's always right. And, you know, she's got to deal with her God complex again.
I'm never opposed to the function of this type of character because I think they can be very rewarding and challenging because...
And it you know, is an easy source of conflict within a script to have these disagreements.
And many times over in a long-running show, you see, with especially protagonists, often shows can become complacent. They can just become very easy with the lead character because, well, they're the function. Like many times over, at least for us, the lead of a show is often the least interesting character because, well, they serve the needs of the story. But you sometimes need characters that come in, whether they're new faces or recurring faces or even friends, that challenge them. Like some of the best stuff of Star Trek is Bones McCoy and Spock and Kirk challenging each other. Like that's the dynamic we all love to see. And I like seeing these type of faces. Steve brought up Captain Jellicoe. Like he's a fun character. He's a memorable character because he is so different and he has points of view that directly go against what Picard does as a leader and what the crew of the Enterprise is used to. I'm not opposed to that. I do find it tiresome that in Discovery, it is there just to lampshade a lot of problems that they have as writers for the characters like Michael Burnham. And then in the end, all of these concerns, all of these points of view of these said characters that come in to challenge are disregarded because in the end they were wrong or they just needed to see it Michael's way, which I find just so boring after seasons and seasons and seasons of this being transplanted to this new character. Like when they introduced Captain Rayner here, I have no attachment to him. I don't hate him. I don't love him because, oh, he's just the Admiral again. Oh, he's just Stamets again. Oh, he's just Saru again. Like, remember Saru was like this in season 1? Remember that Stamets was like this in season 2 and 3? Like, remember the Admiral was like this about Michael? And then, you know, at the end of the season, he'll give a speech like the Admiral did about like, oh, my daughter wrote her own alphabet and it made me think that you do things awesomely. You're right. So it's just not very rewarding. Or like last season, the Rillick was like this as well. So I'm just indifferent. Now, Steve, what are your thoughts on Rayner? I'm imagining you maybe have at least some affection because of the actor as a familiar face.
Yeah, maybe it's because I don't know his trajectory and I haven't had to almost academically go through all these characters over the course of Discovery. I just thought he had a personality. He had a smirk on his face and he had a swagger that no one has. When he was on the screen, I was like, oh, there's an actor who's having fun. Like, here's an actor who's interested in imbuing this character with some kind of energy. And that's a tall order for me because he's a Vulcan that swears. And it's just like, that idea on paper makes me want to roll my eyes. But then when I see him, I'm like, oh, this guy's just a ton of fun. I'm happy to see this guy. So it makes me sad that he has that trajectory, that he just eventually becomes someone who has to clap for Michael and pat her on the back. But I was happy. And in fact, when I saw this episode for the first time, I was like, this guy rules. Why does he look familiar? Oh, who cares? This guy is awesome. And then eventually I'm like, oh yeah, Galactica. So I guess I do have an affection for him, but I genuinely think in this episode, he is a breath of fresh air. Not quite as charismatic as Tarka is, because that guy was, again, similar situation where it's like, at least someone is having fun on the show. But he's in that vein for me. Just
now, Steve, I'm going to just correct you before the fans. He's not a Vulcan either. He's
is he not?
He's a Kellyran, which is like a race from Deep Space Nine that appeared a few times over. So,
okay. All right.
Yeah, he's one of those guys but he doesn't have the silly hairstyle that the males had in Deep Space Nine. It's a tragedy. But yeah, he has personality. He has swagger to him, which is like, we've seen this though. Like, remember Admiral Vance was like this in season 3. It's like, oh, it's a sexy guy from The Mummy, and he's telling Michael to, pull her head in. Then now look at Vance. He's just like, Michael, you're correct. I also agree. And it's like, to give this character credit, he doesn't fully go into that mold, but for the most part, it's that thing. I do appreciate that Raina is a lot more like Michael Burnham. Like, that's where the friction comes from, is both of them think that as leaders, they know what's best and that they need to be into the action and that they have their schemes and plans and things like that. And I also like that he has a history with these two antagonists. Like, he has a personal vendetta against them because you at least get the feeling in this episode they've evaded him so many times that he's become like that grizzled bounty hunter who just won't let go of these crims that keep escaping his clutches. But he's a Starfleet captain. Like, that's the fun twist.
Much.
Booker, you were a courier. You know how this goes. Back me up here.
The further I am from this, the better.
You're almost there. Antares, lock target.
No, we are on a non-Federation planet on a classified mission.
Our mission is to get back whatever they stole.
How do you want a season of a Star Trek show to be formatted? Because Discovery kind of fell into this trap of like,
we've got scavenger hunt.
It's a scavenger hunt.
It's always a scavenger hunt.
There's breadcrumbs that we have to follow. We planet hop or we galaxy hop, and each episode's going to be something.
A revelation that will change our understanding of the galaxy every single time. And I don't know how I want it, but I am tired of the scavenger hunt.
But I think on paper it's a good way to format a season.
Yeah.
Like, you can have the slightly episodic nature of old Trek while still having it be an ongoing yarn. Like, each episode is going to progress the overarching story, but they go to this place and, oh, look, it's people with technology they shouldn't have. Oh, look, it's this.
Little of it continues to matter. I pointed out when we were watching that the previously on doesn't even mention the aliens that were destroying everything, because that part of the plot doesn't continue to matter. Even though that was the big mystery, that was the thing that they were fighting to figure out and determined to work against, and the thing that Book was so afraid of that he turned his back on Burnham and the Federation and all of these ideals and became a mass murderer. But that doesn't matter anymore.
Because we need him for the job.
So it's just like, well, why should I care about this scavenger hunt when there's no prize and there's no fun in the journey for me either?
I think it's also damned if you do, damned if you don't, because it's a part of the show. It's been this way since season 2, primarily.
It's the format. I accept that. But, like, you ask me, like, how do I want it? It's like, well, I don't know.
Yeah.
But, like, it's not necessarily that this format is bad. It is partially because they just keep on trying to one-up themselves. They're always going bigger, bolder, and more action.
The idea that it's this season-long story where the fate of the universe is in the balance and only Michael Burnham can fix it. Not interested. Really just not for me. And it was sad because when... God, what season was it where the burn happened? And then they're like, well, I guess we're in the future now and we're starting the Federation. And it's like, okay, good. This sounds fun. These episodes, you could be going to a planet and you're learning about, hey, what have the Romulans been up to in all of this time? Hey, what are the Klingons doing? Hey, what is it like to restart a Federation? That's enough for a story. But then they had to introduce like the sound monsters. I don't even remember what those aliens were that were like eating everything, and Tarka had to
blow them up
into a terrorist. Yeah. It was just sad. And like the Red Angel and stuff, like these things are just not interesting to me. And once you're in, you're locked in. That is the season. And I did not have it in me to sit through another 9-episode plot that isn't that interesting, that I've seen 3 times already. It made me sad. I didn't walk away from the show cavalierly. I was like, oh man, like, all right. I really was hoping, but no, yeah, that's an L from me.
Yeah, it's always fascinating though, like what degree you can take it, because for me, that's me with Enterprise. You know, Enterprise starts out like, here's the show about how we build up the blocks of the Federation. Like, how do we get to that point? Like, how do humanity...
Not important.
And within a season, they give up on it and they just become a nothing show. And then it's like, whoa, no, we have season-long arcs. The Xindi.
Oh,
yeah?
That's a bad one.
And then season... Well, people love the Xindi.
Well, they're wrong. They're wrong.
I just want to see... What's your favorite season?
I like season 4. I like when I really
thought...
you go.
Then season 4 is like, hey, do you remember this thing? Here's Sung. Now here's an prequel Sung. Or how did the Vulcans get their logic thing going on? Well, here's this.
I thought it was
Nazis.
fun. I loved Steve Sharippa from Sopranos fighting Nazis with Captain Archer. I thought that was awesome. But they would make trilogies. Like, hey, these 3 episodes are going to be a little trilogy standalone adventure, which I think splits the difference really well. But I also like all of Enterprise. I'm a
even the finale. Steve's a finale of Enterprise Defender.
I love the finale of Enterprise. Such a stupid idea. I love it.
No, killing Trip was the best move they did.
Killing Trip.
Killing
the Troy thing, getting Data to literally phone in a line.
Just
I love it. It's
murder Shran's character and everything. Yeah.
Oh, murder Shran, especially because the one after it was like a perfect finale where they fight these basically human supremacists and they win and they get their. That was a really good.
But notice how we're now talking enthusiastically about Enterprise instead of Discovery.
I love. Enterprise rules. Discovery is why we're here. Yeah.
Rachel, we already did before this, as a warm-up to the season, a whole review and discussion on The Chase.
Yes.
Because before, we did not rewatch The Chase when this season premiered. So we were going off of memories or like, oh, that was an episode. Oh, okay. But now we have revisited it and we have our full-formed thoughts on how we are about it now. I still want to tap into the reactions about this reveal at the end of the episode being like, the season is going to be a direct follow-up to The Chase.
Progenitors. It's weird knowing where it goes that they double down on this episode where the episode doesn't even really grapple with the heftiness of the idea that it's introduced, and Discovery is just like, we're gonna do that but longer,
not more, just longer.
No, but like the actual idea of the progenitors becomes, what if that was, but what if they weren't the start of this chain? What if this is Mass Effect?
Well, that's the end of the story. Yeah, that's what they do. But at the start of this story, they're like, oh, by the way, we found out who created all humanoid life in the universe. It was these guys. And the plot is, what happens if bad guys find the way to do that and use it as a weapon? Oh.
The TNG episode doesn't make it that all humanoid life.
No, it doesn't.
Discovery does that. Discovery makes the universe even smaller
than the TNG episode already did.
With a singular line.
Yeah, which TNG's episode already did that. Like, it's silly to you and I that the chase exists as an excuse to explain why the makeup in Star Trek is limited. That we have humans with bumps on their head. Why are there so many humanoids in Star Trek? Well, because we have actors. Like, we get it. Like, we know we, the audience, don't need an excuse. But hey, here's an excuse that opens up a doorway so huge that it would actually it would redefine the entire franchise, but we're never going to talk about it again because we're not interested in redefining the franchise in the way that saying that there was a life that created all of the lives
We're
before.
not going to grapple with ideas, Ryan.
No, TNG's like, we're closing the door on that and moving on.
We're not going to grapple with ideas.
But Discovery says, hey, maybe we should look into that. Like, I respect that as a creative thing. Like, there are many episodes of previous Star Treks that I say, if it was up to me, I would revisit that and delve deeper into it, or I would write a version of that and maybe...
What's the one that Quentin Tarantino wants to do that for?
Oh, he wanted to do that for Yesterday's Enterprise as a movie, but that episode's already perfect, so fuck off, Quentin. But, you know, and he wanted to do the Gangster Planet episode from TOS for some reason. But, you know, for me, I was not objecting to the chase being revisited. I think it's a brilliant idea because there's so much runway to be had because the idea of the progenitors...
so many questions.
And the way that Discovery is set up, as Steve even said, it is about them rebuilding the Federation. Everything's so delicate right now that if you threw this monkey wrench into it, what would that look like? What would a world in which everyone's fracturing look like when you say, by the way, there is a god race that created
By the way,
us
we all have the same daddy.
That created us all for a specific purpose. What would that do to the fundamental structures of each of these groups as well as the Federation and, of course, our individual characters on the crew? That there, sell. I'm in. Discovery doesn't do that.
No, because it deals with the plot.
Instead says, what if someone used this as a super weapon? And that's less interesting because that's always Star Trek. Wrath of Khan fucked us so much with this idea that we've never recovered from it in Star Trek. Like, what if super weapon?
Ryan. But that kind of idea was in the chase because that's what the Klingons thought that it was going to be.
A weapon, yeah. And then when they found out what it was, they said, that's stupid. We don't need to do anything with it because... who cares? Which is a weird reaction from the Klingons, who do have gods in their mythos and Satan, but whatever. Steve, the chase, do you have much opinions on this episode and the big thing it does of saying, hey, here's an explanation of why there's so many humanoids? And what is your reactions to Discovery deciding we're going to base the foundation of an entire season around an episode from a previous Star Trek show?
I have a pet peeve against the chase. I really hate the chase. It's one of my least favorite episodes of Star Trek. It's kind of like what Ryan says. Like I understand that I'm watching a television show made on Earth with human actors. Like I connect. My imagination is big enough to see a Cardassian and a Denobulan and just be like, yeah, whatever. Two different, like, who cares? It's makeup. There's money. There are writers. Like, I know I'm watching a show of actors. I literally don't need you to tell me why they look like people. Like, I get it. There's a million reasons why that doesn't matter. Maybe you watch Star Trek and you're like, okay, this is not what a Klingon actually looks like. It's kind of, what we filter it, whatever. That's fine. But the idea to explain why something looks like it's made by actors in Hollywood, it's like, that's the stupidest thing in the world to me. I think it's a complete waste of time. It's a question I didn't have. And it's one I do not want answered. And so I really don't like that episode. And when it turned out that this was the basis of a whole series of a show that I already don't like, I just had to laugh. I'm like, all right, this is definitely not for me. Like one of my least favorite episodes on a show that I think kind of stinks. Nope. Yep. See ya. Peace. I'm out. Yeah. And I think your suggestion was actually pretty interesting. Like what happens when you find out that there is a god, that you have a straight line from a bunch of slime on a cave planet to a million different species. Like, I think that's very interesting. And I think this is a good time in the Trek canon, in the timeline to explore that. Like you said, I think they could have done a lot of great things with it. I think what they were more interested in doing was showing clips from TNG and being, remember that?
It's Picard.
Huh? Yeah,
He said
Picard.
his name earlier in the episode. Now he's here.
Now he's here again. So that's, I don't think this is a show to kind of deconstruct it.
No. But they're interested in religion, and they're interested in faith, and they're interested in all this stuff, and yet this episode disregards it immediately with David Cronenberg saying, thousands of years ago, we would have considered these people gods. It's like, why wouldn't you now? Honestly. You're telling me that, the Bajorans wouldn't have an opinion on this? You're telling me the Romulans wouldn't have an opinion on this? You're telling, that's the thing that bugs me, is they immediately say, we're not going to do that, with David Cronenberg saying it's irrelevant. Like, years ago, we would have reacted in a way, but now we're not going to. He may as well looked at the camera and said, we're not going to do any of this stuff that could be, we're just going to do a scavenger hunt about people with a super weapon. Because you haven't seen that before in Star Trek, Steve and Rachel. You haven't seen our heroes have to stop people with technology that was meant to be positive and use it as a weapon. You've never seen it before, ever in your life.
Sci-fi in general has never dared touch that concept.
Either way, we have to find it before they do. In the wrong hands, I can only imagine how a technology this powerful might be used.
We're revisiting something we haven't done in a while, since we haven't done Discovery as a discussion. And I know you're smiling, but also I see tears forming in your eyes, because you're reminded that Hugh was here. We're here for the Hugh Dar, where we check in on the character of Hugh Culber, someone that's been a pivotal part of the crew, someone who the writing always pays attention to and gives him stuff. Everyone in this episode, we said, has things set up for them. Tilly being a teacher, Paul worrying about his legacy, Michael being a captain, Book being called back in and trying to redeem himself. So, what about Hugh?
He's here in a couple of scenes, always with Stamets. So he's candy this episode.
But what are they setting up for him in the season, Rachel? Surely there's got to be at least a little something there. It's Hugh. He's a big character.
No.
What?
No.
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 No, but
no, there's nothing here.
But he interacts with all the other characters, so surely he's got to.
He's present, but he's there to kind of do his job. Like, I don't get why he's doing an autopsy on an android.
I'm sure Crusher did that a bunch with Data during TNG. I'm sure there's episodes where she did it, so I'm sure that's the excuse. Like,
Not an autopsy. Data didn't die.
There's times where he's turned off, but yeah, you're right. Usually the engineer deals with Data.
Yeah.
Why is he dealing with... Well, Rachel, I'll give you this. Never forget that Hugh Culber has been proven off-screen multiple times to be an engineer himself.
Yeah, he's
remember,
a genius.
he came up with the technology that Paul used for the spore drive on his arms.
No, I never let that go.
They have it that he's a bit of an engineer off-screen, as well as a therapist on-screen, and the chief he's not the chief medical officer. Remember that. He's not. He's just a doctor, too. He's not the chief. People forget. And also, he's not married to Paul. People forget that as well. They went in the first season, they went out of their way to say they're not married, but people never remember that because why aren't they? And why isn't he chief medical officer? Why aren't they?
But I swear Stamets said you married a pack rat.
Yeah, when did they get married? Yo, you're with
He did say that. He definitely said that.
And so when did that happen? Season 1, you got holes to fill. Steve, we're being a bit facetious here, but Hugh Culber, he's as important as, he is should be as important as the other characters, and yet, at least to our eye, it doesn't seem like he's even given the hint of anything other than just to be the guy that stands there and says hello as well.
Yeah, it's funny because the doctor on a Star Trek show is almost immediately the most interesting character, at least the top 3. Because everyone has to see the doctor. Everyone gets sick. The doctor speaks for health and speaks for the audience. It's
Has
very
ethics
strange
as well that goes different to the military ways of the other crew.
Yeah. If we're talking about just as far as mechanics go, the doctor is like the only person who could tell the captain what to do, essentially. So
Yeah.
and if you look back at Trek, like I would say probably 2 out of my top 5 Star Trek characters of all time are doctors. So it's funny that these characters are just so that this guy is so forgettable. What is he pulls the hologram skeleton out of Fred, and he goes, "Oh, Fred, this poor guy," and I think that's it. Is that what he does?
Oh, he comforts Hugh. I mean, he comforts Paul about his insecurities of legacy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Script confirmed. Stamets says they're married.
Yeah,
In
and I
this
confirm that all of season 1 said that they weren't. So
Yeah,
somewhere
no.
along the way, they
Well, he
got
did
married.
die.
Or after
Maybe,
his death.
Yeah,
maybe
did they get
after
married after he died? Or did
Yeah.
he marry his corpse when they snapped his neck like a twig? Remember that they did that?
Yeah, that was sad.
Remember
And
that
then
Hugh
they-
had died?
they
Don't
wanted
worry, Steve. He will get an
undo. Control Z.
It's so hilarious because Hugh does get an arc this season, but they introduce it like 4 episodes before the end, and it's about the fact that he died. Okay.
Oh, again, another one? Okay.
Yeah, another one.
he has to do that again?
Another
Okay,
one
sure.
about like, oh, I died one time and I feel grief and all my loved ones are dead. But you don't get any hints of anything like that here, and you won't for ages. I just wanted to say, like, Hugh, we're here to talk about Hugh. He should be more important, and I do wish that a lot more of his scenes weren't just him standing by Paul's side. I wish he was a bit more assertive of a character. I wish he had more. I always wish that he has more because I love doctors as well. They're often my favorites. Like the doctor from Voyager and Bones McCoy are often having a wrestling match of them being my top character of Star Trek. I'm always flipping the coin on which one of those 2 guys are my favorites. I love Bashir. I love Phlox. Like, I love the doctor characters, and Hugh is just, I'm here too. And you realize halfway through the show, they fucked it up. He should have been the counselor. And they realize that, and then they have to try and pivot him being both, and neither gets the attention that they need to fully work.
Nobody can stick to just having one job. Everybody must be an engineer and something else, at least.
A linguist, perhaps. So, Rachel, on our scale of Yum being bad and Yum Yum being good, what do you give Red Directive?
It's a yum. Yum. It was boring. It was dull. I know that most of this doesn't go fucking anywhere. One thing that I didn't mind this episode was the music. Like the score that was made for the scenes was nice at points, just to prove that I can say a positive.
It was more appropriately used.
Yeah, like the mixing was not my fave.
It's always louder than everything else, yeah. I have to give this episode a yum.
Yum.
I try to be fair. I try to put out the positives when I can. I don't want to just be a negative Nelly all the time.
That's my job!
That's your job. But there are things that I do see genuinely to commend, but they are outweighed by the shortcomings and the failures and the obnoxiousness. Like, it's very obnoxious, this show. I just can't sugarcoat it anymore. It's a very, very just arrogant show. And I don't know how to say this any more than just Discovery just feels so American. Like, at times when they say, we are Starfleet, I'm just waiting for them to say the Pledge of Allegiance, Like, it's just so
that does come through strong.
American
Don't let them
to
speak.
me.
Don't let them speak for us. we don't like it here either.
Steve, what is your rating of Yum being bad and Yum Yum being good?
This is Yum. I had a terrible time.
Yum.
Did not enjoy this at all. Obviously, I turned it off. In Discovery's favor, though, I also did this to Picard. Those 2 shows, to me, are just, I couldn't do it. I didn't want to see it through.
But everyone loves season 3 of Picard because they kill Ensign Rowe. Isn't that fun? You wanted to see her die?
That's another one where I watched the first episode. I'm like, this is just not what I'm looking for. Bye.
Bye.
See ya. I get what you're saying though. It is very American, where it's just like, it's it's American to me in that it just is so cynical. Like, this show is just so cynical. It's so nothing. There's nothing to it. It's the kind of show that people make to, I don't know, just have something nice in the background so they can say there's a new Star Trek without really engaging with it. It's sad. It made me sad to walk away from the show. I think I gave it a fair shake. 4 seasons and an extra episode, I think, is plenty of time to do something. It didn't really do it for me. So this is a yum. My best to all the actors and I guess writers, everyone involved. I hope they have a good life, but this show is not it.
Rachel, what is the next installment of Discovery that you and I will be watching and discussing?
I just want to share one of the titles of the review, a review for the next episode, which is Snooze Covery When Boldly Going Feels More Like Slowly Slogging.
Okay. Someone was feeling clever with their titling there.
Yes. The next episode that I will be subjected to is called Under the Twin Moons.
And what
the description?
Yeah, please. I need to know. I need to be refreshed.
On Saru's last mission as Captain Burnham's number 1, the team ventures to a seemingly abandoned planet to hunt for what might be the greatest treasure in the galaxy.
Oh, what could it be? Now, Steve, do you think Saru uses his head spikes in the episode?
I hope so.
He does run real fast, right?
He does run fast again in this episode, because you remember that he runs really fast because he's like a horse?
Sure. Yeah.
Did you remember that he can run at 70? You don't remember that in the first season? He could run at like 80 miles per hour.
Planet.
On the episode.
I mean, that's cool. I like
they
that.
brought it back for the final season.
And I know he has like hooves, so that's cool.
In the next episode, remember?
Yeah, remember that? My favorite thing that I genuinely liked about Saru that they dropped in season 1 was he would be grazing food all the time because he's like he's got like a grazing animal.
Sure, yeah.
Like, and he'd always put sugar in his coffee, like sugar in his tea. Yeah, I love that. And then they dropped that.
I love Saru. I Doug Jones is, I can't think.
I'm so sorry that he's not in this season, buddy. I'm so sorry for you.
Rest in peace. I really can't think of an actor who fits Star Trek as an idea more than Doug Jones.
Yeah. It was actually quite surprising he hadn't been in it before, because he was that guy actor when Next Gen and Deep Space Nine and especially Enterprise was on. Like, he was in Buffy and this and this and this. He was always in things. It's actually surprising that it's taken this long to get done. And he's a main guy, so can't wait to say goodbye to Saru. Obviously, he will appear in more episodes, but this is the send-off of Saru for the most part. Rachel, this has been delightful to be back here with you in the hot seat talking about the thing that made us want a podcast in the first place. Mm-hmm. And Steve, I am not sorry for subjecting you back into the world of Discovery.
I got to see this great episode again. I appreciate it because it was an opportunity to revisit my decision, and maybe I could have walked away saying this is great. No, let's see it. No, not how it happened.
No, but, you're still feeling comfortable with that decision to walk away at this point.
Yeah. I think that's right for everybody.
I think Steve's expressed it just a tad, just a tiny tad,
just a touch,
just
a touch.
Tiny touch. It was just, yes. So everyone, you can find our podcast on your social medias of choice under yumyumpod or yumyumpodcast. Make sure to give us a rating and review. We would very much appreciate it. You can contact us directly over at
yumyumpod@gmail.com.
We have a lot of stuff happening over on our Patreon, so if you want to support the podcast, you can do so. We have a community Discord, and as stated, we have reactions to our watch-throughs of Discovery, so you can see us in real time groan and roll our eyes and maybe even cheer with delight at some of the things happening in an episode. We release our stuff on there first, so if you want to get episodes early, you can do so. And we have a huge back catalog. We've talked about all of the Star Trek movies. We've talked about the best and worst rated episodes of Trek. We even have our episode-by-episode breakdown of Star Trek Picard Season 2, in which you can hear us do what Steve did, which is say, no more. And we never watched Star Trek Picard Season 3. But you can get all of that over on our Patreon. Steve, where can people find you and some of the projects you work on?
I am on Blue Sky now. I think that's the only one I'm on. That's going to be S.A. Winchell at .bsky.social. I'm on Blue Sky. Find me on Blue Sky. And I do a comic with my friend Ben, who I did Babylon 5, Last Best Babylon 5 with. That is Have Your Fill. And that's on Instagram at PhilComic and haveyourphil.com. So hope you
Phil
enjoy.
spelt like the name, yes?
Yes. Like the little boy is named Phil. So that's the comic. And yeah, who knows? I think this year a lot of stuff will pop up, and I'll let you know when that happens.
Steve, you're now burdened with the closing out of the episode. Could you tell us who in this particular installment should have said yum yum?
It would have been great if when they showed the old footage of Picard, he should have turned and said yum yum.